going to miss out. Dusan is about to speak on ICOs and financial services comprised of security tokens. He's possibly talking about the most important topic at the whole of this conference. So Dusan, I'm going to let you get straight on with it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sorry for being late. The lunch was heavily delayed, so we did skip the main course and we did skip the dessert just to be here in time. So sorry about that. Like always, I just want to, we're a very small group. Maybe you can ask maybe one or two questions also at the end, so to make it a little bit more interactive. I do always ask the first question, we're 10 or 15 people here, like how many of you have actually invested into crypto? Can you just raise your hands just to see who I have here? So I have 2 people there. Anyone who has invested into an ICO at all? Nobody, okay. And the rest of you, have you done angel investments? Hands up, please. Okay. And the rest, are people coming from corporates maybe? Hands up. Okay, quite a few, all right. Okay, so just one thing, as two small remarks, like how big is this in terms of tokens in general? And I'll give you one example which is not a security token and one that is potentially. So Telegram, that I think you've heard about, they are planning the largest ICO in the world, which will be about 2 billion. They just raised this morning 850 million. So that is huge. I'll give you another example, which is more coming from the financial services sector, which is more what we're talking about here, and this theme. One of the largest, well, the largest exchange that is actually trading crypto, it's called Binance. How much volume do you think they do per day? They started operation 13th of July. Does anyone want to guess how much volume they do per day in US dollar terms? Go ahead. 5.5 billion. They do 0.0% on that, which means that they do 2 million of revenues every day, and the company started the 13th of July. So the run rate is somewhere on $700 million of revenue on a yearly basis. So why am I telling that? That is basically companies like Deutsche Börse, like Nasdaq, New York Stock Exchange, Tokyo Stock Exchange, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, Singapore Stock Exchange, they are asking themselves some fundamental questions, right? When they see that there is such an enormous need for trading crypto. So I'm just giving those 2 numbers for you as a little bit of a starter. Now, I'm supposed to talk about security tokens and financial services. I guess some of you might have heard what I talked about yesterday. But what I would like to, before I dig into the security token, I just want to kind of explain when we talk about this, there are 3 different things. There's basically utility tokens, and I'll give you an example of that. Then these payments tokens, which very often are utility tokens. And then it's security tokens, which are really related to the financial services. So these are the 3 main things to kind of keep your hands on in terms of definitions: utility token, payments token, and security token. So I'll give you a good example, I hope, of a utility token, just to kind of see what is really a utility token. And the definition about a utility token is that a token can really be used within the tokenized company. How many of you use LinkedIn? Okay, everybody. So I'll give you that example. If I would start to LinkedIn today as opposed with a token and a non-token, I was one of the first LinkedIn users, one of the first 1,000 in Europe using it while I lived in Europe, LinkedIn. The way I did it in those days, when I started with LinkedIn, I would basically call you and say, I'm sending you a LinkedIn invitation, can you accept it? And you would probably answer me, why, Dusan? And I said, well, I think you'll get a lot of network from it. And normally the response would be, well, I'll do it, Dusan, because I know you, but I don't really know what you're talking about. That's really how LinkedIn started. So I basically got about 1,000 LinkedIn users in the first couple of days by calling people on the phone. As you can hear, I helped LinkedIn a lot in Europe in those days. I got a letter from Reid Hoffman when he IPO'd the company and said, thank you for being one of the first 1,000 LinkedIn users in Europe. That was it. I didn't get anything else, right? Just a nice letter. In a tokenized LinkedIn, I'll give Click as an example, which is a recent ICO. I would get a token for that effort, for that action that I have actually done as a reward, that I have actually found you and you got into LinkedIn, or you got into LinkedIn, or you got into LinkedIn. And I would get a token for that. So that me as a person in 2004 of LinkedIn, I would be aligned with LinkedIn and the creation of the value of the token. That is an example where you can actually use the token within the ecosystem, right? And that's the same with many of those, that's what you call the network's effects, which are extremely important for a utility token. So that's LinkedIn, and I explain an example that most people know. That's actually what Click is doing, which is a fairly successful ICO that has been in that area, and the company is coming from Canada. Now, I'll give you another example. A very successful ICO within financial services is something called Omisigo, which is a little bit like Stripe in the US. And it's reached a $1 billion valuation of its ICO. I would guess that not many people have heard about Omisigo here. Has anyone heard about Omisigo here? That's what I expected. So to give you an example, and how many of you are using or have heard about PayPal? So that's three quarters. So let's take the same PayPal example there, right? So how would the PayPal example work? So in the PayPal example, you have a wallet which in those days was mainly used within eBay. It was internally mainly with eBay that it was the real killer application for PayPal in those days, right? And then later on, basically PayPal started to be used outside of eBay itself and became a global e-wallet standard across the world. With a tokenized economy and a tokenized PayPal, basically all those that would be using PayPal, all the merchants using PayPal outside of eBay would have been aligned and received some tokens and rewards, as opposed to maybe commissions and charges. So basically, again, you can build something that is using just internally and actually do it in the outside world. And that's, again, where the network effects are very, very strong. So in payments, it's a huge possibility to do really use the tokens. And that's a big part of financial services, right? So in these cases, the PayPal example I gave with the payments reward policies is a utility token, it's not a security token. And why am I so tricky about that is because if it is a utility token and you can clearly see the network effect, then it's basically commodity laws or laws that are not security laws that are applied. Now, the last example is that you actually only invest into a company for financial returns. So after my talk yesterday, I had 15 people said, why can't we just do an ICO on this company or that company, and instead of doing an IPO, we do an ICO? And the clear objective for that is actually to get a financial return, and you do a financial investment, and that's it. That is a security token. And then the lawyers try to package it, and it may sound like a utility token, but that's where, you know, a lot of regulators are seeing through that and saying the only thing you're doing is you're disguising a little bit you know, the way you're doing your proposal, but all that is, it's really a security law that should be applied, and that is a security token, okay? So I just wanted to distinguish between the utility token, the payment token, and the security token. So the security token, you clearly do it for return on investment and nothing else. Now, the first security token was actually in US sense at least, the first security token done from a legal regulatory point of view was done the 31st of December with one of my portfolio companies called SharesPost. So we did a 42 million raise of a security token. So it was a traditional investment proposal where people invested money just because they basically wanted a financial return in that company. We had the license, which is called an alternative trading system license. We had 50,000 accredited investors that wanted to invest into this security token for really one main reason, liquidity. So what is the difference? Why would I, if I am running Uber or Airbnb or this company called Finom, do a security token as opposed to just raise money from a VC or a private equity firm? And the response to that is basically liquidity. So they did this 42 million raise basically that they also wanted to offer liquidity immediately afterwards. I hope that that kind of definitions are clear. So that is the main driver of the security tokens. If I could give a very good emerging market piece that I really believe is a really good security token example, would be fractional ownership. If you think about how we actually invest in real estate, in many times there are barriers to enter a real estate investment because the minimum of investment that needs to be done is very high, and then leverage comes on top of that. With the blockchain, you can fractionalize a lot that ownership into small bits and pieces so that all of you can get in for $100 into it. And then you can put leverage on top of that. That user case is very, very interesting from a blockchain point of view, and it also already exists. And on top of that, you can get trading for the 100 or 1,000 investment you've done in a security token liquidity. So that's one example that I wanted to share with you. And the most interesting example was the one that I shared with you yesterday, which was really how VC and private equity angel funds or accelerators can actually benefit from that. And that's where I really believe is the most disruptive piece. And that I did talk about for 50 minutes yesterday. But just to kind of repeat on that, what I really feel is disruptive there is that any accelerator, any angel syndicate, or any angel fund or VC or private equity fund basically can get liquidity in the smart contract written into it after a certain period of time. And that is really, really disruptive. So, yes, go ahead. Oh yeah, that was not a question. So that is really what I believe is the most disruptive user case within financial services. It's really on the funds. So how can we maybe then as investors be part of this? Either you can run a fund, but I do want to mention one other user case. In many of those ICOs that are happening, no matter if it's a security token or utility token or a payment token, we know that we can run syndicates with angels. That's what we do. We call it angel groups, we call it angel investing. So the way private pre-sales are done in many ICOs is that actually they are run by syndicates. So somebody takes the lead, somebody does the due diligence, and then they basically redistribute an allotment between different investors. And that's very much how angel investing works. So for me, one of the stronger user cases are, from an angel investing point of view, that we invest into a company with a pure sense of security token, and then we can participate in the private sale where syndication is happening, and then we can take the company to the ICO. So that's the way I can see a redefined role of the angel investor into, in particular, security tokens, because we are investing for one main reason, and that's return on investment, and not to actually to create a token system in itself. So that's really, in a summary, what I wanted to tell you a little bit about how big this is. I gave the example of Binance, 5.5 billion of volume daily and 700 million of revenues on a yearly basis. A little bit the difference between the utility token, the LinkedIn example, the payment token, the PayPal example, the security token example that I gave on fractional ownership, but also on the different funds that where it can be very disruptive and create liquidity. I do believe, and that's my last 30 seconds, that the utility tokens will always have a massive disruptive influence, which will mean that the valuation can become enormous. I don't believe that will happen on security tokens for that simple reason that given that they don't embrace the token itself into the ecosystem, the benefits of tokenization are not as big as it is with a utility token. But they're still so strong that they will happen because they do offer this liquidity piece that actually not a traditional investment offers. So that's really what I wanted to give you as an insight. I do think security tokens will be very exciting. I think you should keep an eye on it and see what's going on in your respective country in terms of regulation as well. Do keep an eye, and hopefully you make money on it one day in the long run. Thank you very much.